Good morning, Safe Harbor ladies. This is our third class in our Christian Secret of a Happy Life series, and our theme is self-surrender. And with that in mind, we're going to begin in our first posture, which is the fetal position. So we're going to come over onto one hip. You can have the head on top of the arm, folded or straight, whatever feels comfortable. We're going to draw the knees in sort of to a right angle so that you can feel an arch in the low back. And then find a place for that upper arm, maybe on the belly so you can feel the breath. Maybe draped over the hip and thigh. Or if you feel like you need just a little kickstand for balance, that hand can rest on the floor. You can close the eyes. And so as we're thinking of self-surrender, let's just picture that we've just placed our whole self in God's hands. And here is our quote for this week from Hannah Whitall Smith. It's about what the hidden life consists of. And it's simply letting the Lord carry our burdens and manage our affairs for us instead of trying to do it ourselves. Most Christians are like a man who was toiling along the road, bending under a heavy burden, when a wagon overtook him and the driver kindly offered to help him on his journey. He joyfully accepted the offer, but when seated, continued to bend beneath his burden, which he still kept on his back. "Why do you not lay down your burden?" asked the kind-hearted driver. "Oh," replied the man, "I feel that it is almost too much to ask you to carry me, and I could not think of letting you carry my burden too." And so Christians who have given themselves into the care and keeping of the Lord Jesus will continue to bend beneath the weight of their burden and often grow weary and heavy laden throughout the whole length of their journey. Take a couple deep breaths, picturing that scene, breathing steadily in and out through the nose. She goes on to explain what these burdens are. "When I speak of burdens, I mean everything that troubles us, whether spiritual or temporal. I mean, first of all, ourselves. The greatest burden we have to carry in life is self. The most difficult thing we have to manage is self. Our own daily living, our frames." I think she means our bodies there. "Our frames and feelings, our especial weaknesses and temptations, our peculiar temperaments, our inward affairs of every kind. These are the things that perplex and worry us more than anything else, and that bring us oftenest into bondage and darkness. In laying off your burdens, therefore, the first one you must get rid of is yourself. You must hand yourself and all your inward experiences, your temptations, your temperament, your frames and feelings, all over into the care and keeping of your God and leave them there. He made you, and therefore He understands you and knows how to manage you, and you must trust Him to do it. Say to Him, 'Here, Lord, I abandon myself to Thee. I have tried in every way I could think of to manage myself and to make myself what I know I ought to be, but I have always failed. Now I give it up to Thee. Do Thou take entire possession of me. Work in me all the good pleasure of Thy will. Mold and fashion me into such a vessel as seemeth good to Thee. I leave myself in Thy hands, and I believe Thou wilt, according to Thy promise, make me into a vessel unto Thine honor, sanctified and meet for the Master's use, and prepared unto every good work. And here you must rest, trusting yourself thus to Him continually and absolutely. Oh, Jesus, we do. We place all of ourselves into your hands. So nice to begin in the fetal position. We're just going to roll onto the back from here with the knees bent and place the hands on the femur bones, the thigh bones, and press into the femurs and arch the back. And on an exhale, round the back and lift the tailbone, kind of releasing the pressure off the femurs. And then press again and arch. And exhale, curl it in. So this class is going to have a lot of back releasing in it. A lot of times when we're carrying fears and burdens, you'll feel it especially in your low back. So this is just beginning to get some length, plump up the discs that separate each of the vertebrae. Release some of that burden off the low back. And spiritually release our burdens onto the Lord. And one more time, press away, inhale and arch. And exhale, curl it in. Feels so good. We're going to roll off to the side. No, we're not. I was thinking we were doing something else. We're going to stay on the back and just lift the right leg up. You can interlace the fingers behind the thigh. If this is feeling like it's hard to get the leg to be straight and vertical, you can let go of the leg and just reach further, but see that there's an arch in the low back. So you're either kind of holding on to the leg as it's a little further away or a little closer. And you can begin to rotate the ankle. I like this pulled in a little more. And rotate the ankle in the other way. And point and flex the foot. Can you feel that releasing a burden off your feet and the front of the shins and the calves? And rotate a couple more times around. And then really press up through the heel. We're trying to get some opening and release in the hamstrings. So when the hamstrings are tight, they pull on the low back. You can put strain there. So we're going to do a lot of hamstring unwinding so we can unburden our back. And then we're going to just hug the knee in. And as we do that, start to lower and extend out through the left leg. Reaching out through the heel, flexing that foot. And just imagine as that knee's coming down that that's releasing our burden, allowing the Lord to carry us. And then bring the knee over to the side so that the thigh is more on the edge of the body. Instead of over the core, it's off to the side. Getting a little hip opening here. Still arching in the low back, so it's like the sit bones are pulling down. And then bring the right arm on the inside of the knee, reach around the outside of the foot, and then bring the sole of the foot up. So we're flexing through the sole of the foot. This is half happy baby. Sometimes this can feel a little intense as the knee is coming down and really far off to the side. So if you need to pull it in a little closer to the core, that's fine. You might find a little spot there that needs a little opening if you explore that a little bit. And sometimes I like to place the left hand on the top of that left thigh to remind that to root down. Notice the breath. We start to hold the breath when we've pushed ourselves too far. when we're trying to be in charge of it all. So instead of doing that, back out a little if you need to, until the breath can be smooth and even. And release and extend out through both legs and feel the difference in the legs, the aliveness that's in the right leg. And then bend both knees and we'll do the same thing on the other side. So extend up through the left leg, any amount, but try and keep that knee more at a 180-degree angle, straight up and down, reaching up through the heel. And you can start to rotate the ankle, free chiropractic adjustment there, one direction and then the other. Really feel how the foot is getting a lot of release, shaking off those burdens, and then point and flex the feet. Feels so good. A couple more rotations here, and then really reaching up through the heel, trying to unwind through the hamstrings, getting some length there to release the burden off the low back. And then hug that knee in towards the chest and extend out through the right leg, keeping an arch in the low back, flexing the foot. It's hard for me not to flex both feet. They want to do the same thing, but you could be relaxed in your left foot, flexed in your right. And then slide that knee off to the side so you feel a little more hip opening there. Notice the breath. We can really release a lot of tension through our exhaling. So rather than hold your breath, sigh away the tension on an exhale. Then bring the left arm on the inside of the knee, grab onto the outer edge of the foot, and then reach the sole of that foot up towards the ceiling. I'm kind of at a right angle here. The shin vertical. Maybe the right hand on top, the right thigh to remind it to root down. Find a location for the angle of that knee that feels sustainable, where you can stay steady and deep in the breath. Releasing all of ourself into the Lord's hands. All that troubles us, all the worries we have around the future and our plans and how will things work out, we leave those into His care. And release again and extend out through both legs, and now feel how even and balanced we feel. And just let the weight of the body sink for a moment into the mat as we come back to that intention of just releasing all our burdens onto the Lord. And now we roll off to the side and come up. I knew we would at some point. And we're going to extend the legs into Upavishta Konasana. Your legs don't have to go as wide as they possibly can. Just go as wide as feels comfortable for today. And you can grab onto the thigh and rotate it so that we're rotating the inner thigh down. And the knees are facing up towards the ceiling, and we're reaching out towards the heels. And we can get that sensation of reaching out through the heels even more if we bend the knees for a moment and then press out through the heels to get the legs to lower down. And I'm just going to rest my hands on my shins here, keeping the toes pointing vertical, and just start to circle. And you'll feel as you kind of come over each of the legs in turn, how that starts to release through the back of the legs. Get
hip opening and hamstring opening, everything that would pull and burden the low back. We're going to stretch out today. And in the other direction, you synchronizing movement with breath, so maybe exhaling forward and inhaling back. Just feeling how the back of the legs are starting to unwind a little more. Releasing the burden off the low back. And coming to center, and we're going to cross the legs with the right leg in front of the left. And then fold out over the legs, feeling the sit bones still reaching down. And then we're going to start to sway. We really want to get some nice length from the pelvis all the way up to the shoulder. Really stretching through the sides of the body. And then walking the hands off to the left, right hand stacks on top of left, and then pull back through that right sit bone. And feel that nice opening through the side, through the ribs, even down into that low back. Just how lovely it feels to release some of the burden off the low back. And then walking the hands over to the right, left hand on top, and pull back through the left sit bone. Deep, steady breath. A nice opening so we can release our burdens. All those little hidden anxieties and cares. And come back to center and just sink for a moment. This kind of bowing posture, releasing our burdens, placing ourselves fully in the Lord's hands. And rise up, and we're going to do the same thing, just crossing the legs the other direction. So now left shin is in front of right. And we'll extend out long and sway. Sometimes I feel like people have been told that Jesus forgives us for our past, and then we have the story of from now on everything's going to be glorious and glowing in our lives, and we think that's going to be through our effort. And walk the hands over to the left, right on top of left, reaching back. But it's really not. It's moving in an upward direction because we're listening to Him and we're not trying to do it all ourselves. We're waiting for grace to carry us, to show us the way. And walk over to the right, left hand on top and reaching back. Breath nice and steady, releasing the burden off the low back. It's free. We're free not to have to figure it all out and to do it all on our own anymore. And back to center and just reach and extend out long. You can say with me, Jesus, I trust you with my whole self. Or if it's more authentic to say, Jesus, I want to trust you with my whole self. I want to leave it all in your hands. And rising up. Feel it already how much taller you're sitting after stretching out that low back. We're going to come to the top of our mat into asana. And if you want to take this moment to go and grab a block, we're going to be needing that later. You can get a thick one or two thin ones, whichever are available today. We're going to place our feet at the edges of the mat so that the edges of our feet are in line with the mat. So now you know your feet are parallel. We're going to grab onto the elbows so the palm of each hand has an elbow in the center of it. And then just sink the head. And you might notice that you need to put a slight bend in the knees at first. And that's fine. The hamstrings can be very tight sometimes. And we're just going to start to sway here. So first we can sway back and forth. Feel the weight of the body as the whole burden of this outer body like comes into the feet. And we rock back and forth from heel to ball of the toes. Just feel how your feet are digging down into the mat to allow you to do that. But as we do this, we're also going to be kind of imagining, that our inner self, kind of like the top of our head is the spout of a pitcher, and all our inner cares, worries, temptations, anxieties, we're just pouring those out. Emptying out all our inner and outer burdens. And you can start to kind of sway a little bit more so that you can reach and stretch the side waist. That low back a little more. You might naturally notice that one knee bends a little bit. The other knee straightens to make room for the swaying and twisting. You may really feel the back of the legs starting to unwind. And as those hamstrings unwind, we're releasing the burden off the low back. Pouring out all this burden of self, bringing our whole self and placing it in God's hands. All right. We're going to leave our right foot right where it is and step back our left foot and place both hands on the inside of that front right foot, lifting that back heel till it's vertical. And we're getting a little stretch on the back and inside of this front leg. And if this feels like enough stretch, we can just pause here and breathe. Or we can start to bend the elbows and lower down a little more. And feel how that gets to a whole new set of muscle fibers that want to release their burden. And come up, and we're just going to swap out legs by stepping that left foot back to its position at the side of the mat and then stepping back with the right foot. Both hands are under the shoulders, kind of looking forward, lifting that back heel to stay strong through the back leg, and then lowering down any amount that feels accessible, that you can keep the breath steady. Releasing our burden. And in this shape, don't you feel kind of the weight of yourself? It's a load. How nice that the Lord wants to carry that burden for us. And straightening the arms, dropping down to that back knee and coming into a table position. So knees are under hips, hands are as wide as the shoulders, fingers spread. And this time, instead of just going straight into cat-cow, I'm going to reach my right shoulder forward and my right hip back and get some length through the side waist. And then other side, reach the left shoulder forward, left hip back. And then just alternate with the breath, reaching and stretching. It really does feel like a cat stretch, doesn't it? that cat arch stretch, but more this, getting some length in the low back, release in the low back, releasing that burden. And now we're going to kind of hula hoop the hips a little bit. Just feel how that fluid motion starts to release any tension that might be there in the low back. So there's a little bit of a cat-cow here, a little bit of that side arch that we were just doing, and other direction. Just really circling the hips and releasing. And then here's a little fun one. So come to neutral, tuck the toes, and hover the knees. So to do this, we really have to draw in through the low belly, separate between the shoulder blades, pressing the floor away, and then release our burden. Boom! Knees back down. We'll do a few cat-cows here. So arch on the inhale, look forward. Exhale, tailbone tucks, head comes down, squeeze out all the air, cat. Inhale, cow. Exhale, cat. Inhale, cow again. Exhale, cat. And come to neutral. And here we go again. Hover those knees. Without holding the breath, engage the core muscles. Feeling strong through the core. But all this effort makes us want to release our burdens, doesn't it? So drop the knees back down, drop the belly, lift the heart. Cow, tuck the tailbone, drop the head, cat. Inhale, arch. Exhale, round. Inhale, arch. And neutral. One more time of lifting and hovering the knees. We're staying for about 3 breaths. Just long enough to feel the shakiness and the heaviness, and then dropping down into the relief of releasing our burdens. And then releasing the low back with a few cat-cows. Now, we're going to get into pigeon from where we are now. So I'm going to stretch back through my left leg and then bring my right knee forward, flexing that right foot. And then it feels like we slide back with that other leg. Fingertips tall, sitting tall. And in pigeon, we can have this front shin at a variety of angles. So we can either have the heel coming in close to the left hip crease here, or we can have it come more forward until that shin would even be parallel to the front of the mat. So kind of play with the angle that's going to work in your body today. We want there to be a hip opening, but we don't want it to be excruciating. We're all about releasing our burdens today. So we're up tall on the fingertips, and this will be our inhale, look up. And our exhale will bend the elbows wide and fold kind of into that cat pose. So the belly is drawing up as the head comes down. And inhale, arch up, straightening the arms, reaching back to the back leg, and exhale, bow. Inhale up one more time. And exhale, bow. And this time you can either stack the hands and place the forehead on the hands, or stack the fists so that the
Fist comes to the center of the forehead and we feel a little pressure between the eyebrows. And we're just gonna rest here. It's a nice time to make little micro adjustments. Check that the shoulders are out of the ears, that the back leg is stretching long and the foot is near midline, that the pelvis is square. You'll feel if that left hip is popping up a little bit, it takes the stretch out of the right hip. So bringing that left hip, rotating it down towards the floor, then you start to feel more square in the pelvis. And as that hip releases, the low back can release its burden. Release the strain that can be on it. Remember to keep that right foot flexed to protect the knee and be digging that outer edge of the foot into the floor. This is a good moment to pause. Come back to that intention of releasing the burden of self-surrender, placing ourselves into God's hands. And rising up, I have to kind of shift and wiggle to come back to that table. So tuck the back toes and walk the knee in. Woo! Well, maybe give that right leg a second to unwind. Do you feel it? The blood coming back in. And then extend back through the right leg and bring the left knee forward towards the wrist. And slide back long, flexing that left foot, finding an angle for the shin that feels sustainable here, snuggling and nestling in. We're up on the fingertips, lifting tall. This is called pigeon. And can you feel that arch in the chest that feels like the chest of a pigeon? And then we're going to exhale, bow, elbows go wide. And inhale, arch up. And exhale, down. And inhale, up. As we exhale, bow, we're releasing our burdens. And stack hands or fists. Rest the center of the forehead. Make those micro adjustments, square the pelvis, and feel that release in the left hip now. And in this pause, we can ask the Lord, is there something that I'm holding on to as my responsibility that I can release to you? Is it my temptations? My temperament, my inner worries and anxieties, my worries about the future, whatever about yourself that needs to be more fully surrendered to what the Lord reveals. And either give it to Him now or tell Him, I want to be able to give that to you. Sometimes that clinging is just so tight. And we need time to build up that trust with the Lord. And Lord, I want to be willing to give this to you. My whole self. Rise up, tuck the back toes, walk in the back knee, and we kind of come back into table, but we walk the hands like one handprint forward, index finger straight ahead, tuck the toes, and come into downward facing dog. Come into our points of alignment here. You might want to bend the knees to begin with so that you can get the sit bones super tall, and then straighten the legs any amount.
And we'll start to pedal it out. So lifting one heel and then the other. Maybe synchronizing that with the breath. As the left heel comes down, press the right heel of the hand away. As the right heel comes down, press the left heel of the hand away. Just feel that dynamic stretch there. We're going to come up onto the balls of both feet, bend the knees, and step the left foot up to the hands. And I'm going to now walk that left foot off to the left, so that foot is angled out at a 45-degree angle on the outside of the left hand, and then drop down onto that back right knee and sink into that hip. Okay, so this is lizard. Lovely lizard. And if you're already feeling a big stretch in the hip, then you can just pause here, or you can come down to the forearms and then rotate to the outer edge of that left foot so the knee can open even more. And breathe here. As we open the hips, we're releasing that burden off the low back. And then a little more by reaching the left arm out and off to the right, coming up on those fingertips and pulling the sit bones back. Just feeling that nice long stretch all the way up the side body. And then coming back up onto the hands, drop the foot, and we're gonna come into down dog again as our transition. Maybe a little bend in the knees to get the sit bones up high, and legs straightening, and up on the toes, bend the knees and step the right foot forward and off to the outside of the right hand. Come down onto that back knee. You can keep those back toes curled. This may be enough. Just notice with your breath. As you drop those hips down towards the ground and that right hip starts to open, you start to hold your breath. And if you can go a little further, you can roll onto the outer edge of that front foot and come down onto the forearms. Just pause here, releasing the weight of the body into the shape, releasing the burden of ourselves into God's hands. And then reaching the right arm out and away, off to the left, up on the fingertips, and then pulling that right sit bone back to get a nice stretch. Up the side body, into that low back. And release. Come up onto the hands. Bring that knee back into table, then to down dog. Alrighty. I'm going to come up on the balls of the feet, bend the knees, step the left foot forward this time so that I can show you a little better. So our front knee is bent, our back leg is straight, so this is high lunge. And then we're going to straighten that front leg and come up onto the heel. Now as we come onto the heel, we sort of bow over that leg without hyperextending in that knee joint. So micro bend in that front knee. And then inhale, come forward, bending the knee, come into that high lunge. And then exhale, pull it back. Drop the foot, look forward. And then pop the foot up and bow. You feel that nice stretch up the back of the leg that's going to release some burden off of the low back. more time, forward and draw back. And then we're gonna plant the foot, bend the knee, and root that back foot. So heel mid-arch alignment or heel alignment. And we're gonna bring the left forearm onto that front thigh. And we're gonna reach the right arm up and over and arch in the back. So the gaze is either down or even kind of toward the navel. And then feel that low back getting a nice stretch. Releasing the burden off that low back. And then as we've released that burden, start to turn that left rib cage up as the heart turns up. And we rotate the hand till the palm is facing behind us. Extended side angle. Release all that burden into God's hands, and then we can shine, not dark, under those clouds of heaviness. Sweep down, both hands to the floor. Extend back into downward facing dog for a moment. Up on the toes, bend the knees, step the right foot forward this time. Here's our high lunge. You can be up on the fingertips. And then exhale, lift the ball of the foot and bow. And bend the knee, drop, inhale, and exhale, draw back. Stretching out the back of the legs. And as the head comes down, remember that pouring out all our inner burdens. Not just our bodies, but our feelings. Not just our outer life, but our inner life. Our thoughts and cares. And last time, come down with that front knee bent and then root that back foot. It can be at a right angle to the front foot or angled in a little bit. And we'll bring the forearm onto that front thigh and reach up and over with the left arm, feeling that low back. Get some nice opening. Some real length between that back heel and the fingertips. And then as we release that burden, we can start to rotate the bottom ribs up and over. Palm reaches behind us, arm is over the ear, gaze is up. Coming out of that darkness and heavy burden. Feeling brighter and lighter in the low back. And spiral that hand down to the floor. Step back. Downward facing dog. Woo, feeling that spaciousness in the low back. And then drop down to the knees. Like everything's coming up here. We're going to bring the left foot forward. And then shimmy that back knee back till we can come into a low lunge here and then pull back into a runner's lunge. So very similar to what we were just doing. And then inhale forward, sinking the hips, lifting the heart. And exhale, bow, pressing out through the big toe ball mound, maybe bending the elbows off to the side to come a little lower. And inhale forward. And exhale, pull back. One more time, forward. And this time, when we pull back, we're going to walk both hands over to the left. So we're up on the fingertips, pulling that right hip back as we get some length in that right side. Feels so good. And then walking the hands back. We'll bend in one more time for that low lunge. And this time when we come up to runner's lunge, you'll want to have your block where you can grab it. You can start to shimmy that front heel off of your mat so that you can slide down towards splits. And when you get as low as you comfortably can, still breathing, then bring both hands again over to the left side and see if that helps you come a little lower, a little deeper. And bring the hands back, framing that front leg. And this is where you can grab that block and maybe put it on that lowest height under the sit bone so that you can come up tall. And then inhale the arms up, gaze is up, so we're releasing our burden down. We can rise up tall. And sweep the arms back down. This always feels a little awkward coming out. So pulling that front heel back in usually messes up my mat a bit. Place the block off on the other side. And we'll bring that right knee forward, left knee back for our low lunge, sinking the hips on the inhale. And exhale, pull back and bow. Inhale forward. And exhale, bow. Elbows may be coming off to the side so we can come a little deeper. And back. And this time, walk the hands over to the right, up on the fingertips, and just feel how that changes, where the stretch is going, lengthening all those muscles. You can get long and release the tension and burden that they've been carrying. And then back to center, bend the knee, come forward. And exhale back and bow. And then shimmy that heel off of your yoga mat. Have your block where you can grab it. Start to slide down into, this is Hanumanasana. And when you get as low as you can, bring the hands over again onto the right side and see if that helps you. Just go a couple of inches deeper. And then bring the hands to frame that front leg. Bring the block under that right sit bone so you can release your burden down onto that block. Inhale the arms up. And exhale, bow. Ah. Don't you want to stay here in splits for just 1 second? It's not often you get to do this during the day. And then pull that leg back. We're going to need our block for next pose too. Whew, that was fun. All right, we're going to do a Setu Bandha Sarvangasana variation. And you will need a wall. So we usually do supported bridge with a block under our sacrum with the knees bent, but we're going to do that today against a wall. So I'm going to place the block so that when I sit upon it, I can reach my heels and legs out evenly to the wall. So we get our distance. And then I'm going to bend the knees and scooch, this is sticking a little bit, scooch forward on my block a little bit so it's a little more on the sacrum. And then I'm going to lay down over the block, hugging the shoulders under, and then stretching the legs out long into the wall. And pause and rest here. Just feeling the release in the low back. This is a counter pose to doing splits. So feel how that's releasing any tension that came from that Hanumanasana. what it is, the burdens that we are to be letting go of. When I speak of burdens, I mean everything that troubles us, whether spiritual or temporal. I mean, first of all, ourselves. The greatest burden we have to carry in this life is self. The most difficult thing we have to manage is self, our own daily living, our frames and feelings, our especial weaknesses and temptations, our peculiar temperaments, our inward affairs of every kind. These are the things that perplex and worry us more than anything else, and that bring us oftenest into bondage and darkness. In laying off your burdens, therefore, the first one you must get rid of is yourself. You must hand yourself and all your inward experiences, your temptations, your temperament, your frames and feelings, all over to the care and keeping of your God, and leave them there. He made you, and therefore He understands you and knows how to manage you, and you must trust Him to do it. I hope you're enjoying this. Feels like a restorative to me. We're going to bring the soles of the feet to the floor, bending the knees so that the feet are as wide as the hips and the knees are over the ankles. We're going to press in the feet to lift the hips off the block, and we'll release and take the block and put it off to the side. Bring the back down onto the floor. Unshrug the shoulders and hug the knees into the chest. We'll begin to rock from side to side. A little more back release. And then we'll bring the hands to the heads and the knees and circle in one direction and then the other. Releasing that burden of self. Releasing that burden off the low back. And then knees wide, toes towards each other, and begin to circle the knees wide and apart. Back together. Feel that nice arch and length and lift in the low back, and other direction. Legs are still a little shaky for our Hanumanasana. And then soles of the feet to the floor, arms out shoulder height with palms up. And we're going to press in the feet, lift the hips off the floor, swing them a couple of inches off to the right and come back down on the left hip. Draw in the knees and let them fall to the left, and the gaze goes to the right. An easy twist. Sighing away any tension, releasing any burdens. And then center the head, look at the ceiling, lift the top knee, then the bottom. Soles of the feet on the floor, square out the hips, press into the soles of the feet, lift the hips up, swing them a couple of inches off to the left and come down on the right hip. Draw in the knees and let them fall to the right as the gaze goes to the left. Releasing our whole self into the Lord's hand. Burden of self to His care. And center the head, lift the top knee, then the bottom. And we'll square the pelvis. This is another pose like pigeon pose. It's actually pigeon pose on its back, where you bring the ankle across the top of the left thigh, flex the foot, and draw the thigh in. And because we already did pigeon today, you might notice that this is feeling a little easier in the hip, and you might be able to even grasp around the shin and press that inner thigh away, or not. And change legs. Left ankle on top of right thigh. Interlace behind the thigh. Maybe rocking. Pressing the elbow into the right thigh. That's not your right thigh. That's your left elbow into your left thigh. And we'll prepare for Shavasana. We're gonna stretch out long on our mat. The feet as wide as our mat. Feet splayed out. Arms out from the body, 45-degree angle, and check in with your low back. How is it feeling? If this isn't feeling sustainable, you can bring the soles of the feet to the edges of the mat and let the knees drop in for constructive rest posture. A song for us to meditate on while we're relaxing with our eyes closed and releasing our burdens to the Lord.
The sweetest sound, the highest praise is letting go of this life you gave. Our greatest prayer, an act of faith, is an open hand. Lord, have your way. Take it all, every hope, every dream, every plan. Take it all, every weight, all the shame and brokenness. Jesus, I surrender all, every victory and loss. Take it all till all I have is open hands. Crouching fast, a life of fear, a burden hell has no place here. 'Cause you're coming down to cast it all on the shoulders of the one who's strong. Take it all, every hope, every dream, every plan. Take it all,
Deepen the breath. Wiggle the fingers and the toes. And begin to rock the head from side to side, making small movements. Inhale the arms up overhead till the thumbs touch on the floor behind you. Draw the legs together, pointing the toes, and come into a long stretch. My low back is feeling so spacious. I hope yours is too. You can hook the thumbs and reach the right fingertips away from the right toes. And then left fingertips away from left toes. Oh my gosh, it's like butter. It's so easy and loose now. How nice. Draw the knees in towards the chest and roll to your right side, resting on that bottom arm as a pillow. Use the hands to press into the floor and come up into a comfortable seated position with the eyes closed. Inhale the arms up overhead, palms come together at the heart. This is the prayer Hannah Whitall Smith has given us. Hear, Lord, I abandon myself to Thee. I have tried in every way I could think of to manage myself and to make myself what I know I ought to be, but I've always failed. Now I give it up to Thee. Do Thou take entire possession of me. Work in me all the good pleasure of Thy will. Mold and fashion me into such a vessel as seemeth good to Thee. I leave myself in Thy hands, and I believe Thou wilt, according to Thy promise, make me into a vessel unto Thine honor, sanctified and meet for the Master's use, and prepared for every good work. And here, Lord, help us to rest, trusting ourselves to You continually and absolutely. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you. I hope you're feeling spacious and unburdened in your low back, and I'll see you in Bible study.